Hi, this is Pete from the Family IT Guy. If you didn't see part 1 of this video where I outlined my plans for upgrading my PCs, I suggest you check the link out.
Okay, so I've completely torn down the Antec case now. This is going to be the machine for my sort of retro gaming PC, and I'm going to put my 7870 graphics card in there. But I have noticed that that gap is pretty tight. I think it will just fit with a few millimeters to spare. But effectively it is going to sort of block off this bottom section of the machine, so there's not going to be much airflow. The case does have a spot there, what was for an 80mm intake fan. Now I've got a 92mm fan here, and I think I might try and fit that in there. At the minimum I'm going to have to drill a hole or two, I think, to fit that in. That hopefully will give enough airflow from the outside of the case in for the graphics card. So I swapped the case fan for one that I had put into the Zalman machine, mainly because this fan has a 3-pin connector, and I think the motherboard I'm going to connect it to also has a 3-pin connector. So I think it's going to be a journey of discovery with this case and machine to see if it cools it adequately or not. So there we go. Okay, so I can also get the DVD drive in as well. Now, after some experimentation with the hard drives, which are going to go in these slots here, I've decided to remove the extra panel that was in front of the slot there to give a bit more room. So now I'm waiting to get the motherboard in here, which happens to be in this machine here. So I shall get that out and transferred over. One of a couple of things to mention about this motherboard, though, is that the HP manual seems to be a bit particular about which SATA ports are used for which drives and devices, so I'm going to have to remember which is which. And the other complicated thing is that the case fans, as well, the front power supply switch comes in a more complicated compound unit like this, which is fine, but I've done a bit of experimentation and worked out which are the power supply on and off switch buttons using a little power supply extender. So I'm not going to run into issues there, and everything else I think is fairly standard. So I'll get that moved over. Okay, so motherboard out from there and over here. So I've just plugged in the CPU and motherboard power connectors and a couple of other connectors, so I'm just going to give it a try now. It hasn't got a hard drive in, but hopefully I can get into BIOS, make sure that some things are working. Okay, so here goes, that's the power switch there. Got a fan, so F10, and yeah, got into BIOS okay. So let's just see, CPU fan's going, case fan is going, and it's pretty quiet, so that's all good. So keep going with the assembly. Okay, so graphics card in. As I said before, it's a pretty tight fit, but I haven't had to bend any metal to get it in there. I've tested it and it appears to work. So now time to get the hard drives in and get an operating system on the machine and start to get using it. Now, in terms of hard drives, I've got this 500GB hard drive here. I've also got an additional hard drive, which is an old 160GB drive. The reason for the two drives is 160GB drive, I'm going to put Windows XP on it, and the 500GB drive is going to have Windows 10. So it's going to be a dual boot machine, but using separate hard drives. And I've got room to put them in the case, as you see there. Windows XP on one drive with the necessary drivers loaded, and Windows 10 installed again with all the updates applied, and the machine seems to work well. I've managed to rebuild my Steam library on there without having to re-download all the games, which was a good thing. One point of note was the original case fan was a 3-pin fan that plugged into the motherboard header, but unfortunately it didn't seem to supply enough voltage to allow the fan to start, so I've had to switch to an older fan that plugs into a Molex connector at the back of the machine. It's a little bit noisier perhaps than I wanted, but never mind. The other 92mm fan is plugged into the motherboard, and that seems to work okay, and I can control that using speed fan. So what's left to do on this machine? Well, some of the case panels are a little bit scratched, perhaps from some of the previous usage the machine got before I bought it. So since they all come off, I think it's fairly straightforward for me to paint them. Yes, they are coloured on the inside, but that's fine. So I've got some black paint here that I used on the job around the house. I also need to find something to just sort of fill that area in the front there on the case. So here's the finished article. I made a blanking plate for the front, and the sides of the case are all painted in a sort of a dark matte colour. So I'm quite happy.
And let me into Case Station. The name was no accident. Its people were locked in an endless war for survival.
So just coming out of the game there temporarily, I'm just looking at my temperatures. Maximum graphics card temperature 60 degrees, and maximum CPU temperature 42 degrees. That's all really, really good. So you may have noticed during the build that the machine had a DVD drive, and that's so that I can install some of the old games onto the XP hard drive. Yeah, these don't really come as downloads, and that's not how it used to work in the old days. So looking forward to playing one or two of these again.